Hi everyone, and welcome to the Voice of 𝗵𝗶𝗴. And in this 𝗵𝗶𝗴 talk series, we've been bringing you fresh insights from top leaders and payments professionals. And this is actually the fourth in a series of 5 talks. And today we're going to be discussing the importance of building and managing high-performing teams. So joining me today, again, we have my co-host Simon, and we're joined by Lynsey from 𝗕𝗲. And before we kick off, Lynsey, would you like to give a quick introduction of yourself, please?
Sure. Thanks, Claire. Thanks, Simon, for having me. So, Lynsey Verillo, I'm leading our digital sales team at 𝗕𝗲.
Excellent. Thank you, Lynsey. And Simon, for anyone that hasn't watched us already.
Yeah, so Simon Stokes, I'm Chief Commercial Officer with the Connexus Group, and we provide recruitment consultancy, tech team, and M&A advisory services into the gaming, iGaming, and payments and fintech sectors. Over to you, Claire.
Fantastic. Thanks, Simon. And yes, hi, everyone. I'm Claire Maslen, and I'm an independent consultant working in payments and mobile payments in particular. And I have had the pleasure of co-hosting this series, as I say, with Simon. So today, let's talk then about high-performing teams. And I guess the first question to throw out there is, what do we mean by high-performing teams? Because it seems subjective to many different people.
Yeah, I can definitely start and give a perspective. It's a great question. I think there's so many different ways to look at performance, right? You can obviously look at the output of the team and the delivery, but from my perspective, a high-performing team is one that is really working in harmony, synchronized, and it's a great place to be, a great place to operate. So that would generally have a real mix of skills, a real mix of experience and background, a very clear path for growth and development within the team and beyond in the organization that it's in. And yeah, just generally a great place to be where you feel like you're productive and it's giving you your personal and your professional development.
No, thank you. Thank you, Lynsey. Yeah, and I mean, this time, Claire and Lynsey, we're tackling a slightly different topic to last time we spoke, when we were talking about diversity and balance and how being intentional around that can bring the right outcomes and accelerate results for you. And now we're sort of thinking a little bit about this sort of high performance and what does high performance mean? And you touched on some of it there, Lynsey. I think motivation is definitely one area, being focused on the objectives and KPIs and outcomes. And I think getting that motivation and drive to succeed, those are some of the areas, Claire, I think that would resonate with me.
Yeah, and I'm sure we can all look back on occasions in our career when we've worked for or been part of a high-performing team, and actually the motivation that gives everyone raises their bar because they want to be part of this kind of success.
I think that motivation comes from learning. I mean, I remember from early in my career feeling like I'm in an environment where I'm learning, where I've got leaders that I can model their behavior. Those are really the instances where I think I've felt most productive at those early stages.
Yeah, and I think one of the things I was going to say, Lynsey and Claire, was that how do you sort of foster high performance and how do you foster motivation and so on, to the things that we mentioned previously. And I think foundational to it for me is trust. You're building an environment of trust where everybody feels that they're respected, they're amongst equals, they're all striving in the same direction to achieve the same goals and outcomes, and there's a clear remit there. And I think that there are many aspects, and we'll touch on some of them, I'm sure, in addition to this. But I think that sort of foundational trust is super important to create the right environment and foster the right environment that will give folks the runway to be a high performer, to get motivated, to succeed.
Yeah, and I think, trust obviously is one element of it, and how do you go about creating trust within your team? And I think it's trust to obviously try that, to go the extra mile with the potential that they may fail, but feeling safe to do that. But I think also around how do you as a leader create trust with your team? And I think from my personal experience, vulnerability, actually showing some vulnerability for you as a leader can pay massive dividends, because ultimately, you are human and your team wants to feel that they are dealing with a human rather than someone who can actually end up paralysing you by fear. That's the other end of the spectrum that I'm sure we've all seen as well.
What are some of your experiences,
I really like the point you made, Claire,
in this area?
Yeah, many from both, as I mentioned, being in a team, but also leading teams over the past few years. I really like the point that you made, Claire, around the ability to fail and to learn from those failures. We've been talking about that a lot recently. I'm in the process of setting up a new team at 𝗕𝗲, and that's a principle that we've definitely acknowledged needs to be critical, because it's a great way to learn and to develop is to try and feel comfortable to be in an environment where it's okay to try things that maybe you don't have the fully formed perspective on how it's going to work out. So you create that environment where it's okay to try to test and to learn from, not even always failures, right? Just a way that you would perhaps do things differently. So I think that's a great one and super important. For me as well, I think I would probably build on, I agree with everything that you guys have said. Another one for me is really knowing how I'm contributing, or every team member is contributing to the ultimate goal of the organization. And, having been in a big organization like 𝗕𝗲 for a number of years now, I think that's just, we've seen as absolutely imperative. Being able to connect whatever, everyone's doing at an individual level to that bigger corporate picture and strategy, and feel like you're contributing to it. And I think, you can do that successfully in a number of ways. One of the other things that I've seen work really well is recognition, and having quite a formalized, structured way of ensuring that there's many ways to recognize team members. And you can do that both sort of on an individual feedback basis, but those recognitions can also get embedded into some of those, big organizational updates, where they can really call out individuals that have been parts of teams that have been driving some new innovation, new initiatives, or just great results that we've had.
Yeah, what about you, Simon?
Well, one of the things I wanted to touch on was for individuals. So this is where you've got people managers that are inheriting a team, or you've just started a new organization, or to Lynsey's point, she's standing up a new team. And the need for, as the leader, setting out the key objectives and what we are here to achieve and execute on. And then thinking intentionally about the team that you have. So either you're building a team from scratch and you're thinking about the component parts necessary to be successful. And we talked about that a little bit last time around balance and diversity. But I think it's also ensuring that if you're inheriting a team, you look at the team and individuals and see where they best fit and sit to help you achieve the objectives. And on occasions, you may need to do some sort of surgery to the team in terms of people maybe sitting elsewhere in the organization, not in your team, because they don't necessarily carry the skill sets or the experience or the prerequisites that are required. And so there's that sort of intentionality that you need to building a high performing team. So I think about an example I gave in the past where I had to set up a new logo team, but I was inheriting people that had never really done new logo sales before. And so there were some that wanted to do it, some that wanted to do it but needed some training, and some that really didn't want to do new logo sales because it's not for everybody. And in those instances, finding a path for those that didn't want to do it, rather than just keeping them on and sort of forcing them to do it, and bringing new people into the team to do those roles. And that way you had harmony, you had balance, everybody was there wanting to do the job in hand. And that made us a successful and high-performing team.
Yeah, and I think actually, if we've all been through various management courses and development programs, but some of this is real kind of back to basics with, Tuckmans and, forming, storming, norming, etc. You have to have your benchmark. You have to see where you're starting from when you pull a team together, because how can you possibly pull on the strength of those people that you've got if you don't do that groundwork assessment? And I think all of us are so, we're all about hitting the ground running, getting up to speed quickly, but actually sometimes it's better just to pause and assess what you've got so that at least you're moving off a good playing field.
Yeah, and I think it's really important to establish clear direction for the team. I think, Lynsey, you touched on this point as well. Ensure there's a good level of collaboration and input across the team. There's this element of everybody contributing, everybody having a platform, making it meaningful for all, for the leader being approachable to all, from the most junior to the most senior in your team. I think sometimes there can be a little bit of a bias to, maybe more junior members not being able to, contribute in a way that more senior members can, because you're looking at it through one dimension. But actually, those junior members bring a whole load of different perspectives that can be used. So I think it's that sort of being approachable for all, inviting all to contribute, and to your point earlier, making it a safe space to do that. There's no sort of wrong question, as it were, and everybody's viewpoint is valued.
I think as a leader also, it's really important to get to know each individual, and really, particularly when you're taking on board a new team, as you mentioned, Simon, really getting to understand what their motivations and drivers are, but also the way that they tend to interact. I think you can quickly make assumptions around an individual, but then you might learn that they're very introverted and they just don't feel comfortable to speak up in a particular environment. And sometimes those qualities can become some of the greatest assets, but it does take a little bit of uncovering to really get to know each person, and then finding a way that they can have the most impactful contribution. And to your point also, Simon, maybe adjusting a little bit some of the roles and responsibilities that they've had to fit better for their personality.
So I was just going to pick up on this point around setting clear objectives. And if I look back to, some of the fantastic leaders that I've worked for over the years, they have made the storytelling has become relevant to individuals within the team. So they know exactly what they are delivering and how that contributes to, the success of the organisation, or the strategic change, and, if a change in direction as well. So I think that kind of basic communication side of things really is important. I wanted to just try and maybe look at something slightly different on this, and that is how we look to our recruitment plans, and if we are, do we naturally always try and recruit people who have knowledge of our sector or knowledge of our industry, versus those who may come from a different industry, but actually have behaviours that we want. How do you look for the right fit within an organisation?
Happy to give a point of view on this. I think it's a great question, very important for me right now. I'm about to begin, as I mentioned, recruiting a team that we're building up from scratch at 𝗕𝗲. So it's a topic that we're discussing really actively, and what we're looking for will definitely be a very broad mix of backgrounds and experience. I think we see optimal for this team will be a component of people that do come from within the organization, that know and understand the wider business, so that my team can interact really successfully with the wider stakeholders. But we also definitely want to source talent from outside of the business who will bring the skill set in digital sales, the area that we're building up in, that it can be really quite specialist, and they'll sort of really know and understand what makes a team like that operate well. And then in addition to, I think, the skills background, we're looking for, it's going to be a team that's servicing the whole region with multiple languages supported. We want to make sure there's a great mix of cultural fit and people that are really willing and open to be part of that storming, forming, as you mentioned at the beginning, Claire, and recognize that we will be in this ramp up design phase, and we need people with an openness and an appetite to be participating in that. So I see us as having a very diverse mix of individuals ultimately in the team.
No, it's fantastic. And Simon, I mean, that aligns with a number of the conversations we've had so far through this series, doesn't it?
It does. It sort of resonates from my time when I was in exec search, and one of the things that we did, we hired in the C-level exec, and then we put in the sort of 1 and 2 downs. And it was really interesting having conversations around how they wanted to think about the skill set and experience set, and to your point, Lynsey, the language and gender and location. So I think the important thing is as a leader, and if you are like Lynsey, you're building from the ground up something new, and I think that's a fantastic learning experience, but also a wonderful place to be, because you already are articulating this and clearly done it. You thought long and hard about what are the building blocks that I need, what are the different people, the different skill sets and backgrounds and demographics and so on, and you can almost get a whiteboard and build that out and say, how are these people going to interact, and how do I get the best out of them? And then when you go through that interview process, you're looking for those characteristics. Is this a team player, or are they somebody that's going to be sort of like just going solo? Are they going to be part of building the future, or are they going to go off rogue? Is this somebody who's my future successor? Because you should always have a succession plan in place for the critical roles within your team. So I think that's wonderful. And going back to my previous point, if you inherit a team or have a team but get given a different remit and you have to re-look at the talent, I think the same exercise is helpful in getting that sort of whiteboard, maybe getting HR or 1 or 2 other people together and talking through the individuals that you have, where they fit in the team, or whether they fit elsewhere in the organization because of the pivot in remit. So a really exciting activity to do. But I think the final point for me on this is always take the time to do that. I've never been in a position where I've just inherited a team or inherited a remit and gone, right, well, we're just going to continue doing it the way we did it before, because I don't think that's going to work. And there's always an opportunity for a rethink.
Okay. Well, look, Lynsey, we tend to try to round up these sessions, leaving people with a couple of bits of advice or a top tip. Is there anything that you would like to leave our viewers with?
I think one tip that I would give, and maybe one point that we haven't had an opportunity to touch upon today, is to always incorporate mentorship within any structure of a team, or thinking about helping to grow and develop the individuals that you're with. So both giving individuals an opportunity to find mentors inside and outside the organization, but also giving individuals a chance to start to mentor those coming behind them is a great chance to start to get that muscle going around developing others.
Fantastic. Thank you, Lynsey.
Brilliant. Shall I go next, Claire?
Yeah.
Okay, so mine is about make sure that you make your team's work meaningful, and that's sort of recognizing success daily, weekly, monthly, but also sort of share stories. That's sharing stories about your team to other teams in the organization, sharing stories about the company back into your team, what we're doing well at a corporate level, at a global level. Lynsey, I'm sure, in Visa, this is very relevant, because there's always very exciting things going on, whether it's at an individual level, team level, at a corporate level. But by sort of bringing those stories alive, you make your team's work meaningful.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Simon. I think from my side, you know what I'm like. I'm always looking outside of the business that I work in. So I think there is always an opportunity to learn from other players within your sector or in adjacent industries. And I have seen this work very successfully when, 10 years ago, companies decided they wanted to be digital companies or they wanted to be tech companies, and actually stop looking at their traditional competitors for what was working well there and look at organisations that they wanted to behave like, that they were seeing great performance coming from. So I think don't be afraid to actually step outside of our normal networks and look further afield for guidance and mentorship and, even coaching activities as well.
No, wonderful.
Great
Awesome.
advice.
Thanks, Claire.
Okay, all right. Well, thank you again. Thank you for listening to this 𝗵𝗶𝗴 Talks episode. We will be live in Berlin in March, which is fantastic. Looking forward to that. And we will be running a series of clinics and coaching sessions for people to come along and raise conversations. We'll be back on the main stage again, talking about people in payments. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Claire. Thanks, Lynsey.